Hello, my name is Jack Heritage, practical karate instructor from the Cotswolds.
And I am Pat Woodward, amateur enthusiast and practitioner in a number of different martial arts styles.
And welcome back, everybody, to the Armchair Combatives podcast. Hello, hello, hello.
Hello, Jack.
How are we doing?
I'm doing good. It's been a roller coaster getting this season done, and I can't believe we're already at our penultimate episode.
It's kind of crazy, isn't it? Like, especially when we look at, the first season and stuff and how different we approached it and and how long it took to kind of get the episodes out. Like, for us, we were recording quite sporadically. It was quite difficult to always find time to meet each other and stuff. And I think this season for us has felt a lot smoother. So
definitely,
it'd be interesting to hear you guys and your thoughts. And if you found season 2 better than season 1, it'd be really interesting to hear what you've got to say. If there's things that you think we can improve on, by all means, let us know in the comments. On that note, though, if you're already going to the comments, while you're down there,
you might as well give us 5 stars. You might as well engage. I know I've been asking kind of for silly questions just to kind of trick the good old algorithm. So I tell you what, what's your favourite takeaway? Let's go with that. Let's be honest, I'm a bit hungry.
Can we just do that as the title of the episode?
Yeah, this episode is just going to be ASMR of me and Jack eating takeaway.
A fucking mukbang.
Please give us 5 stars. Leave a comment. Engage with us on our social media.
100%.
All the interaction is nothing but good for the podcast as it drives up the charts
100%.
and it gets us into the right places. As a result, the fruits of that wonderful engagement, we have for you a very special episode. Today we are doing a Q&A. We asked for your questions, we asked for your opinions. You delivered. For the sake of the episode, though, we've narrowed it down into our top 3.
Yes.
So, kicking things off.
Yes.
We have a question from our good friend Jonas from Denmark. He asks, what do you think is most important in the martial arts? The spiritual aspect, the physical aspect, or the mental aspect?
Ooh, right. I really like that question. So thank you for sending that in, Jonas. That's a really good question because I think once again this all comes down to context, which I know is like a big part of the whole podcast, and we talk about it a lot, right? It's contextualizing everything we do so that our students and us as martial artists have a good understanding of why we're doing things and the reason why we do certain things in certain ways. Now, when it comes down to what you're trying to get out of your art, then I guess that's when we start looking at, are you doing this for spiritual reasons? Are you doing it for the practicality? Are you doing it to be really good at self-defense? Are you doing it to be combative? And I think there is an element where you could say that all of them are important aspects of martial arts. Like, it's great being combative, but don't be an arsehole. So I think there is something to be said that, for me, I think having a good character, we mentioned this in one of the previous episodes in regards to self-defense, is having a good character is an important part of everything that we do, because that allows you to move within the space in a way that is productive for you and other people. It means that you can take your ego out of it and you actually be more productive in terms of your ability to learn and your ability to help others learn. We find a lot that when you get students into the club that are more aggressive or they don't have as much regard for other people's feelings, you end up with people that start sparring that are scared of sparring because, I don't want to go with Dave because he hits the shit out of me every time. And for him, it's all about winning and it's not about growing and improving. So for me, I think it actually does all start with the mentality side of the art. Like, come in with a good attitude and everything else will fall into place. What about you, Pat? What do you reckon on this? Because I know you've practiced a lot of arts that are technically more spiritual arts.
Yes, I think there's 2 answers to this question, I suppose.
Okay.
The first is, it all depends on what you're trying to get out of your martial art.
Sure.
Are you trying to get fit and develop good striking skills? The physical will be the most important. Are you trying to do something that instills a bit of discipline and self-confidence? Then the mental side is the most important. Are you looking to engage with yourself on a more mindful, esoteric level through meditation and sitting practice and kind of mindful technique? Then the spiritual side is most important.
Yeah.
As me, my genuine opinion would be all three are of equal importance. Which I know sounds like a bit of a cop out,
No.
but I think it's
a valid response.
But this is the thing: like, if you want to get, if somebody came to me and said, "I want to get fit" or "I want to develop a lot of muscle," if that's all they want, I wouldn't say go to the gym. I wouldn't say go to the martial arts club. I'd say go to the gym.
Yeah.
You want to get strong, go and lift weights. You want to get fit, go and do some cardio. That in martial arts does help you get fit. If nothing else, it helps you stay fit. If there's absolutely nothing else to be said about it, but martial arts, the only goal of martial arts isn't to be fit.
No,
I would
definitely
say.
not.
That would be kind of my 2 cents on the matter. In terms of like the mental side of things, if somebody was like, I want to get, you can develop discipline at home with all manner of things. You can develop your own spirituality. There's books and audiobooks and courses and things that if you want to get like super spiritual, go and do ayahuasca or something like
yeah,
that.
Exactly.
It's kind of there's things but I think that if you want to develop all three of those aspects in perfect tandem, then there is nothing better than the martial arts, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with that, because I think there's particularly when you look at traditional martial arts, I think they do a better job at it than kind of like your modern day purely combative systems. Is that there is a big push to make sure that the art is looking inwards and not directly outwards, and it talks about like the philosophy behind the martial art is kind of it is an important part, right? Especially if what you do is for self-defense, or let's say you practice an art because you like the combative principles that relate to civilian self-protection or whatever it might be. Is that needs to be prefaced by be a good person. Don't be the kind of person that puts yourself in danger all the time. Don't hang around with people that are dangerous. And all of that mentality stuff is quite important. Like, the spirituality for me, at least, out of all the ones that are mentioned, is probably the least important for me. And that's just because, although I know there is a close link between spirituality and like traditional martial arts, I don't think it has much of a place in the modern day, because for me spirituality is also linked to religion a lot, and I don't look at my karate club as a religion, because then I feel like then we start going into the realms of cult-like clubs that are everybody must think the same, everybody must do the same, and because of that you end up with a club that's kind of like, yes sir, yes we do it this way because like we all believe in the same thing and we're all trying to reach this same pinnacle, which is it can be, not always, it can be a dangerous mindset, because then it's almost a bit brainwashing-y, which I'm not a huge fan of, especially when I think people are telling you how to think and how you should live your life exactly. Like, don't get me wrong, there are principles you can share to your students, say, listen, like, if you want to be safe, don't do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
Now, it's not my place as instructor to go, you will not do those things. It's my place as an instructor to go, I would recommend, from the eyes of a self-defense instructor, to potentially not do that. And for the sense of, let's just say I actually care about my students. I might go, listen, like, I don't think this is a good idea for you. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but if, from a self-defense perspective, I wouldn't recommend going on this date with this guy because of the X, Y, and Z of what he said about you. If your student shares that stuff with you. As an example, if your student shares that kind of stuff with you. So for me, I think that the spiritual aspect is probably the least important out of the three. But, there's plenty of people that would disagree with that completely and say, no, it's actually the most important. For me, spirituality is like, is something that's quite an open term, and it can mean a lot of things. Like being spiritual can mean that you're very like religious belief in Buddhism. It can also mean that you just like meditating. Spirituality could be just that you're in touch with yourself. It can mean so many things, and because of that being a blanket term, it makes it quite difficult to be able to say exactly what you mean specifically by spirituality.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think in all honesty, I think you're reaching a little bit with this whole kind of, you don't want to create like a cult like vibe.
Okay.
But I will say I don't find probably just because of the karate that we do, I don't find that it's an overly spiritual practice.
No.
We don't incorporate anything like meditation. We don't incorporate anything like breath work. When I say that, I mean kind of sitting and working with your breath like you would do in a Tai Chi or Aikido or something like that. Don't get me wrong, like there's an element of like, this is when you inhale and this is when you exhale, but that's part of the physical technique. That's not mental stimulation or spiritual.
But there are karate clubs that do that though.
There are.
Moxu right at the beginning of the class, breathe, bow, onegaishimasu, off we go.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely like just for the viewer's sake. For if you're not the listeners' sake, I always say viewers. I don't know why I always say viewers, as if everybody's just somehow watching through Spotify. But
so he's just watching that bar.
Just watching that slowly. Oh my god, we're 19 minutes in. But for the listener's sake, I think it's important to mention that karate can mean a lot of things, and the karate that we're talking about is the karate that I practice. It's not the right or wrong way of doing it. It's just a way of doing it.
This is the way that we practice.
And I know, and we know the gentleman that sent in this specific question, and he comes from a club that definitely puts mentality and spirituality at a much higher standpoint than we do. And to be quite honest, from having spent time at his dojo and all of the people that surround that building and all the amazing work that gets done there, you can feel the love and the attention and the care that has been put into that system, and the care that they have for one another in the club. And for me, that goes to show that there is something in that, the spirituality side of things and the mentality side of things can be even more important depending on who you're getting into the club.
Yes.
So it all depends what you're looking for, right?
No, I think that's a great way to put it. And I think my overall answer to the question would be, it depends on what you want out of your martial art.
Yeah. Because
I know that I've definitely gravitated towards certain martial arts along my journey at different times in my life.
Sure.
So I think it, as much as it might sound like a cop out on the face of it, I know that you understand the reasoning behind it when I say what's most important to you at the time.
Yeah.
That's kind of my that would be my.
I think that's a good, well-rounded.
That's a good
answer.
well-rounded one. Okay, next.
Lovely.
Next question.
I've got a question for you then, Pat.
Okay.
So this question comes in from Christian, and this question is asking, how much of real self-defense do you think comes down to self-control and humility?
Oh, that's an interesting way to put it.
Yes.
Because that I kind of feel is that sort of very volatile little moment after your awareness has failed or your evasion isn't possible.
Sure.
But before anything does spark off, I think it's your duty as a self-protection practitioner to work with yourself and work with your club and your instructor and kind of develop self-control. Because as much as we touched on this quite heavily in a previous episode, it's you need to have a really good understanding of yourself and your abilities if you're going to enter into a self-defense scenario in good stead.
Yeah.
Because if you were to say, I don't know, if you were to be in that scenario and you don't have an understanding of how to control your breathing, how to control your body language, how to work with the rush of adrenaline that you'll experience, then it would be very easy for you to go from, oh, my awareness has failed, it's murder time. Like, just to go full on 100%, no holds barred, and you'll end up doing yourself a wrong as much as the other guy.
Yeah.
And I think in terms of self-control and humility, you do need to have thick skin if you're going to consider yourself a self-protection advocate, because not only if you're in a situation, people are going to call you names, people are going to goad you, people are going to try and make you make a mistake and swing first in a way that is reprehensible. People are going to try and push you into starting a confrontation with them. So you do need to be self-controlled, and you need to be self-controlled in that regard, because that way, if you are ever in that situation, you can try and back out, you can try and escape. And this is the thing, like, people are gonna call you a coward for just walking away from a fight, and that, I think, is where the humility aspect comes into it, of understanding that you're not a coward, you're too sensible to get into a confrontation with somebody.
Yeah.
I think in a strange way, you do need to have some self-control and some humiliation as humiliation, some humility as a self-protection advocate, because people, as soon as you advertise that about yourself, people are going to come after you. From a technical standpoint, people are going to challenge, well, why is your self-defense better than this? Why is your self-protection system better than mine?
Yeah, exactly.
Why do you think you're a good self-protection practitioner? I've seen your drills and they're dog shit. And people are going to people are going to, again, comes back to the online thing that we've talked about. People are going to try and get under your skin. So I think, in terms of how much of self-protection is control and humility, it's a small part, but it's a very, very important part, because, as I said, those two aspects meet in the sort of very volatile moment between your awareness hasn't worked, or your evasion hasn't worked, or you're not able to escape the situation before a confrontation begins, and it's before actual fists start flying.
Yeah.
That's that kind of epicenter crossroads moment of, I need to do something now, and it needs to be controlled, and it needs to be calm, and it needs to be sensible, because otherwise a confrontation will start in full force.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. I think the only thing that I might, bounce back on a little bit is you saying that it's a small part. I think in terms of the training, it is a small part, because I think there's almost like a prerequisite that we hope you are a self-controlled person. We hope that you have humility when you come into the room and start training with us. And if you don't, we will try and educate you throughout your class. Like, so one of the ones we talk about a lot, right, is that you work at your partner's level. Like, if your partner is not comfortable getting hit, then you need to practice self-control and bring your intensity down so that you are both training at a level that is productive for you. Okay, just because you're not hitting as hard doesn't mean you can't be a good technical sparrer. It doesn't mean that you're no longer learning anything. It just means that this isn't about you hitting hard. This is about being in a productive environment where everybody feels safe and everybody feels like they're able to learn. So for me, I think having that self-control, it's not like, I'm not going to come into a class and go, right guys, we've got an hour and a half session tonight, we're doing self-control. It's not something that I would put down as a topic to then focus on for a specific amount of time. However, it should be something that is reinforced in the kind of environment of that class. It should be an integral part of the school and your way of thinking. I think this is why I think, like, calling it a small thing, I think maybe just does it a slight disservice, because it's a small part of how you train and what you're trained on, but it's actually quite an important part of how you approach the art and how you approach self-defense and stuff. So if we jump onto the self-defense example, then obviously if you have no self-control, exactly like you said, Pat, you're going to either end up in legal trouble or you're going to end up killing somebody, or something along those lines, right? You've got no self-control, you're going to end up doing something that's not good. Humility as well, though, is, if you're not somebody that's able to practice that, then you're going to be more likely to let ego take over. Every time somebody challenges you, you're going to take up that challenge and start, going, what do you say about me? No, I'm not, but fuck you. And it turns into this, you turn into this kind of like spiteful person that can't accept criticism and can't take a step back and go, this isn't worth it.
Yeah.
So I think there's something to be said about it being underpinning thing that you should practice as a human being. In terms of its relation to self-defense, I think it is an important part, but it's something that you should be working on yourself, not something that you're necessarily going to be taught. Because you know what I mean, that at the end of the day, we can talk about, like, like you say, like controlling adrenaline. We can talk about breathing techniques to help bring your heart rate down. But if you're somebody that doesn't care about that stuff and you're just you just like a scrap, you like a fight, you like the idea of throwing hands on a Tuesday night outside the pub, I could do an entire session on fucking breathing techniques with you, but because you don't want it, you won't use it, right? So there needs to be something that you're doing in your personal life to make you want to have self-control. Now, sometimes that stimulus might be your martial arts instructor going, listen, like, this is no way to live. Like, you've been in trouble quite a few times now, and, I'm not trying to step on your life, but I don't want to see you getting into legal trouble in the future. Here's my recommendation. Here's some things that helped me. Or, having that kind of like guiding teacher that might help you get to that point. But I don't necessarily think it's a martial art instructor's job to teach you self-control. It's usually a byproduct of the environment that you're in.
Yes. I think that's a good way to put it. I think it's a great question from Christian.
Yeah, it's a really good question.
And it does open up kind of a lot of avenues into other topics. In terms of how necessarily, I think we're in agreement in the sense of, like, it's a small part in theory, but it's a big part in practice.
Yeah.
Because, as you've said, if you could have all the training of you would have all the self-defense training in the world, but if you actually get confronted by somebody you want to scrap with, you're going to.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. It's not something that you should necessarily be. It's not something that you should necessarily want to do, but you never know. We've all got people that irritate us in life, and I don't drink for one, but if you've had a few drinks, somebody gets in your face, you've had prior bad experience with them, you don't like them, then you might just simply throw caution to the wind and go, do you know what? I could get away with, I've got a good understanding of how the law works. Sure. I could probably get away with, if he's coming on to me, I could probably get away with a little something, and then you're in a scrap. And I think you're totally right. That's where it's about humility. It's about not thinking that just because you practice self-defense doesn't mean you are going to win if a confrontation breaks out.
Yeah.
And I think in a weird way, humility's very important in self-protection, because you should enter self-protection drilling and training, and you should enter self-protection scenarios with almost the mindset of, I'm probably not going to win this.
Yeah.
Because it's a case of, if people who start fights are, by extension, trained street fighters, they might not be trained martial artists or trained fighters, but if you scrap in the pub every week, you're going to pick up some skills. one way or
Yeah,
another.
of course you are.
And so it should be a case of you need to understand. This is kind of where, like, as I say, the self control and the humility is that moment before confrontation begins, because just because somebody's having a go on you, and just because they're probably a bit tipsy and they are in the wrong, doesn't mean that if a confrontation strikes out, you're going to beat them.
No, definitely not.
You're going to come out on top. You should enter these scenarios with the understanding of, like, I will probably suffer if this happens. I will probably get really, fucked up.
Yeah, sure.
And this isn't a case of, I don't want that to come from. That's not something you should enter in the mindset of, like, this is fear. This is like, you shouldn't be deepening into this mindset and going, oh no, I'm kind of getting panicked and stressed out and, like, he's gonna fucking kill me if this kicks off. Like, you shouldn't be looking at it from that aspect. You should remain calm, remain controlled, focus on what soft skills you're able to utilize in the moment, and evade the confrontation if at all possible. The self protection that we do practice is, if there's no other alternative, preemptive strikes, all of that. This is where it all comes into, and it's a last case. It's a last case resort.
Yeah, sure.
It's a last resort kind of thing. I think it's worth. It's kind of almost worth looking at the word humility specifically.
Yeah.
Because knowing that you are going to, it's almost a sense of, you have to have the humility of, like, this guy probably knows how to fight better than you, from the sense of he starts fights in the pub. But just because he doesn't have as much martial arts training as you doesn't necessarily mean you're naturally at an advantage.
No, definitely not.
Not immediately. It's kind of that thing of, like, if I am teaching, like, knife defense to people, it's like, you have to understand that if you do end up in a physical confrontation with somebody holding a knife, you're going to get cut. And the whole point of what I teach is, in the absolute best case scenario, you don't. You manage to take them down, you manage to disarm them in a way that is quick and clean and without hullabaloo and fuss. But that's the absolute best case scenario. You are probably going to get cut, and the reason, and what I'm teaching you is how to minimalize your own risk and injury in order to neutralize a dangerous individual that's threatening your life or the lives of people around you.
Sure. Yeah, it makes sense.
In the same way, you should understand that if you're in a self-protection scenario, no matter how good you are at self-protection, you'll probably get hit.
Yep, 100%.
And it's having the humility of, like, you're not Superman. It's having the humility of understanding I will get hit. By that logic, self-protection should feature conditioning. Because you need to know what it's like to be hit. You need to know what it's like to get your head rocked and then have to perform. Yeah. Don't get me wrong, I know that would take a series of conversations to figure out, how do you appropriately drill that? How do you appropriately condition that? Because having your students slug each other on the jaw and then perform self-protection drills is a good way to not have a very full class the next week.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of, it's again the understanding of, like, coming back to Christian's question, the self-control to understand how to act in the situation, and the humility to understand that your plan probably won't work.
Yeah.
You'll probably get hit. You need to have skills to fall back on.
Yeah. Things aren't always going to go your way.
And in the words of Mike Tyson, everybody has a plan until they get hit.
Yeah.
And that is so true, if not more true, for self-protection.
Yeah.
Because
definitely so. the dynamic is totally different.
The dynamic is totally different. If you are able to, in the moment, if you are able to kind of be there, like, okay, so this guy's, this is how he's trying to aggress me. This is the terrain I have around me. These are the things I can put this in the way. I can put that in the way. While you're thinking of that, he's probably going to hit you.
Sure.
And what are you going to do when you have had your head rocked, and he's going for you, and it's like, you need to have something to fall back on. You need something in the muscle memory. Is kind of where I is where I'm kind of thinking about this.
Okay. I think we could keep talking about
Well,
this.
do you know what?
It's an interesting one because we could probably do this as an entire episode.
Yeah.
But I think in the spirit of Q&A, I reckon we jump to our last question, seeing as that has already been. My goodness, that has already been nearly 40 minutes ish.
It's been in the spirit of moving on for Q&A. We could definitely keep chatting about this.
Yeah, exactly.
Shout out to Christian.
Absolutely, thank you, Christian.
So,
good question.
Final question then. This question comes from Andrew, who luckily enough joined us at the Ian Abernethy seminar. Andrew, you sent us a lot of very good questions. For the viewers at home, I grabbed Andrew as the class was coming to an end, and I just went, do you know what, mate? We're about to put out a Q&A episode. This is your last chance to get a question to us. We'd love to hear from you. If you've got a good one, send it our way. Andy sent us 9 questions in 12 hours.
Yeah,
they were all very good, but we have cherry picked our favourite, and that is, how important is kata for transmission of concepts in karate? And do you think there are better methods now?
Oh, right. Okay. This actually ties quite nicely into one of our topics on the last season, which was old school cool, of our old methods better than newer methods. And I think the word transmission is quite important there, because it's a transmission of techniques, the kata. You've got to remember that kata's purpose is not a fighting system. No. The kata itself is not a fighting system, it's a pattern, it's a form, right? The thing that's good about kata is that it gives you basically a lesson textbook. It gives you, here's loads of different things that you can do. The unfortunate thing is, though, is that nobody ever decided to actually write down the actual implied applications within the kata. So it's very much so up to interpretation and understanding of the principles that are being shown, which makes it quite difficult to teach because everybody has their own approach to said kata. And because of that, the transmission of information can actually be quite difficult because, you know, you can train with one karate instructor that does this kind of stuff and they'll tell you that this means this. Train with another, they'll tell you it means this. You know, what we often do is we give the club standard and then we also give alterations and different versions that you can play with so that you've got an opportunity to kind of practice different interpretations of said movements. As a training method, the thing I like about kata is that it is a fast way to do a lot of things. In terms of you're moving through a variety of different movements that have a byproduct of understanding stance. It has a byproduct of being able to do quite a lot of intricate movements in a short space of time that then help inform the applied version of said movement. If you only practice kata, then you are never going to get that benefit. Okay, the benefit you'll get from kata is I have now learned a kata.
Yes.
Or you know, a very small byproduct might be a little bit of leg strengthening from some of the lower stances, but that is not the intended purpose of the kata. The intended purpose of the kata is here is all the techniques, remember them, go. Obviously, for those of you that do practical karate or are interested in bunkai, the application of kata, we often split it into 3 sections. First section being what angle are you at in the kata? The angle will dictate the position that you're assuming in regards to the attacker. The second is the stance. That's telling you what weight shift you're using when you're applying said technique. So if you're going into like a Junzuki stance or a Zenkusa dachi, which is like knee bent moving forward, it means that the weight's coming forward and down. If you're sitting back into a short cat stance, the weight's going backwards, and the stances are integral often to the movement that you're doing. Without the stance being used, you often find that the technique doesn't work. And then the last one is obviously the hand position. What are the hands doing, and how do they relate to the angle and the stance that you're using? And if you use that kind of lens when breaking down kata, you end up with a kind of like, okay, I'm moving at this angle with this stance with these hands, and that kind of gives you an idea. Okay, well, I'm gripping in this way and as a throw, or it's quite clearly a strike, or and you can kind of make your mind up based on principles that have been shown. Now, as a training method, I think for me, the only reason I practice kata is twofold. Number one is memorizing positions so that students, so as an example, let's say your student is struggling with one of the applications of kata, and they're struggling with I don't understand what I'm supposed to be doing with my feet, I don't understand what I'm supposed to be doing with my hands, I don't get it. You can take a step away from the 2-person drill or the 2-person exercise and go, right, this is the posture I want you to hit. This is how I want you to stand, and this is the position I want you to get to. If you can get to this, and you can then move into this next movement, you can do this on another person, and hopefully that it's like a training tool opposed to the objective, right? So I think for that being number one is like the most important one for me. It's like it kind of gives you that option to, okay, take a step away, you're struggling with it, feet need to be like this, hands need to be like this.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Okay, yeah. So the other one is the transfer of knowledge, and for me, I think this is more of a reason as to why I practice kata and I still teach kata, is because we are still in the process of breaking katas down. Now, we've mentioned him a lot this season, but people like Ian Abernethy does a really good job of this. People like Christian Vedebort do a really good job of this. There are plenty of great karateka in the UK and Europe especially that do this very, very well, and they understand the principles of bunkai and they know how to break them down. And because of that, you can take away some really good skills from them. However, these guys were often pioneers in this system. So before them, there wasn't really a standardized application to these bunkai techniques, because funny enough, it was never written down. People didn't actually know what it was.
Yeah.
All they knew is that they might have had a whispering from this instructor to this instructor. This means this means that. And obviously, this is where you end up with people misinterpreting the kata and things going a bit awry. And then you have the sport comes in, and then it all gets interpreted as a sport-based movement, and it's all, and that's a whole. If you're interested in that, guys, listen to one of our previous episodes where we talked about this. But I think the transfer of knowledge is kind of important, because if there's a kata that you haven't broken down, or there's something that you haven't quite understood, instead of going, I don't know, let's disregard the kata, I think a more important thing to do as somebody that cares about karate and wants to improve the art and move it forward, you've got to be able to go, right, I'm going to still teach this kata. If my students don't know what the application is, I'll go, listen, I don't know what it is. I'd love to figure it out. Maybe this is a job for the next generation. But I'm still going to give you the kata. I'm still going to give you the opportunity to now. If you want to break down this kata, you do it. Okay, I've done my bit. If you want to try and break it down, here's the stances, here's the angles, here's the movements. You figure it out.
Yeah, and I think we've had. I think that there was a notable example of this in the club recently, where at the end of Pinan Yodan, you take this kind of very exaggerated step back after performing the last move, and our instructor Stuart was saying, I've asked people about this. The best we can come up with is, in terms of competition fighting or competition sports, kata competition sport kind of thing. They like to finish where they started.
Yeah.
So you take a step back because that's the exact point that you started from. And it's kind of those things where you have to have a good grasp of the kata to ask that question in the first place.
Yes. Yeah.
You have to have a good grasp of the kata to go, well, this is, to pull it all the way back to the first part of the season. This is how we do it.
Yeah.
Does it serve a great purpose? No, but it's not irrelevant information.
No,
It's
definitely not.
it's an homage to how this kata was originally structured, kind of thing. For the sake of, if you apply it to self protection or the techniques that the kata is trying to develop, does it? Do you need to step back like that? No. Is it enough of a movement that you could, put it into like, yes, well, the kata is teaching us to escape a dangerous situation. Also, no, it's one step. I think personally, my view on this point is I haven't encountered a better system for the immediate transfer of knowledge than kata. That's my opinion on it. But I'd say the addendum, as you put it so well, the addendum would be the kata as just a pattern doesn't mean anything if you don't have an educated instructor there to explain this is what every movement is for. This is what every movement breaks down into. And in terms of other better modern methods, none come to mind. It's one of those where I wouldn't say you should be learning you shouldn't be learning your punches from your katas. You shouldn't be learning your kicks from your katas.
No, definitely not.
You should learn your kicks and your punches separately on the modern applicants of the bag and the spot pads. With those kinds of things, you should be learning how to do your kicks with your shields, things
exactly.
like that. So those are the kind of modern applications. But in terms of like how does that relate to kata, I think it's if anything from seeing the instructors and the black belts come in from other schools of karate other than Ryu, I think something that's been made really clear if you know to look for it is these guys are trying to convey the same idea. They're just doing it with a slightly different movement.
Yeah.
This movement in the kata isn't a straight punch. It's to signify that in this moment it is appropriate to hit your opponent. This movement in the kata isn't necessarily a front kick. It is to signify that if you have a good grasp of your opponent, you should kick the leg out from under them. However that occurs.
Yeah.
Or if you were, say again, you take Pinan Yodan as an example. When you turn to grab, when you turn to like some people interpret the movement as you kind of turn out with a straight arm, you do a kick, you drop down, you deliver an elbow. Is that interpreted as you should turn and hammer fist somebody and then kick them and then elbow them? No, that's much more sensibly interpreted as you have a hold of somebody, you take a hold of them, you kick the leg, as their head comes into a range of your torso, you elbow them in the head.
Yeah.
Or the face or wherever. That's the application. Those movements in the kata are designed to simply signify there is a kick or a strike there. It doesn't have to be this exact prescribed punch.
Yeah.
And I think without a dedicated, educated instructor present, you are going to struggle to find that on your own without a solid grasp of the technique. So I think it's kind of it's again one of these addendum questions of, no, I don't think there's a better method for transferring knowledge than a kata, as long as you are being taught by somebody who understands that kata.
Yeah. I totally agree with what you just said there, because I think it's even if your instructor doesn't actually know the techniques or doesn't understand the bunkai fully, provided they can contextualize it for you and say this is what it is supposed to be for. Unfortunately, I do not know the application, but all I know is the principles.
Yeah.
Then you're at least passing on the right stuff and not passing on the wrong stuff. So for me, it's like if you're just passing on the sake of the kata for the sake of the kata, going, I'm going to teach you this for the fuck of it, off you go. Then I think the problem is that students look at it and go, I don't understand what this is for, and therefore then you end up with interpretations that aren't based on fact, right? They're based on conjecture and like guessing, right? So you end up with the kata's meaning this is to strengthen the body, and like I love what Ian says about this, and he says because some people's argument is that kata's meant to condition the body and to make your body stronger and your legs stronger and upper body, and he said, well, if that's the case, then where's the fucking press ups in kata? Because it's quite clearly not for that goal. However, if that's how you've been taught, and or you haven't been informed of what kata is supposed to be, you can understand why people might start interpreting it in different ways. The way that I like to interpret it is based on what we actually know that was written about kata, about the people that actually made the katas, or the people that were trained by the people that made the katas. You know what I mean? Like, we should be using historical evidence to explain these things. So the best people to look at is Mabuni, Funakoshi, Motobu, Otsuka. You read all this, the stuff that they talk about kata. It's often very, very clear that this is meant for close range striking. The angle is meant for this reason. The stance is showing weight shift. This is showing this is showing that, etc. And if you read all of that stuff and then bring it back into interpreting the kata, it makes it far easier to understand what you're actually seeing and what you're doing. Now, I think the final point that I'd like to make about this is, kind of the second part of the question from Andrew was, is it better than modern methods? And for me, better for what? If it's better for the transmission of information, I would argue that kata is actually probably one of the better forms of doing it, because if you've got a syllabus worth of stuff and you teach that to a student, so let's just say within your syllabus you have learned 10 kicks, you've learned 10 variations of hand strikes, some different grappling positions, etc., 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 and then you go, I want you to teach somebody else all that stuff. If, let's just say, we're talking about a time where they didn't write it down, they forgot to write it down, or for whatever reason, or they didn't record the videos of them doing all the techniques, naturally that system is going to become more and more watered down over time, because you guarantee those 10 techniques might turn into 9. The kicking techniques, we forgot to teach that one. Oh, never mind. It's not my favourite, so I'm not going to teach that anyway. So the kata, if you can just teach the kata and the people understand the kata and know the kata, then it's a 2-minute form of going, here's all the stuff you need to know. Okay, this is not the main purpose of training, but if you can do this, you can remember all the separate entities that go into this. And one of the things that I really liked is, so we used to train over in Pershore, and one of the instructors there would teach kata, and he would use it as the textbook for the lesson. It would be, today we are doing elements from Pinan Nidan, and within this session we're going to make sure we go over movements 1 to 5, and you can do an entire session on that stuff, because there's actually quite a deep amount of content in there. It's not as simple as rush through it, get it done. There's like a lot of grappling, there's a lot of striking, there's a lot of positioning, there's angling, there's understanding stance and footwork. There's a whole lesson plan that can be found with just the kata. So I think as a transmission of like information, I don't think it is a bad way of doing it. Don't get me wrong, if you've got a subset of 10 videos that have been recorded by your Muay Thai coach going, here are the 10 most important things you need to do, and that gets sent off to your students, and they can use that as a textbook, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. So that is a valuable transmission method. However, I think kata is a live transmission method. It's a way that you can practice it yourself.
Yeah, and I really agree with that. I think kata has always been something that you could do on your own if you needed to just refresh it.
Yeah, sure.
So I think you kind of really hit the nail on the head of just like, is kata a better system for transferring information? No, because the whole point of kata is it's a information transference device.
Yeah,
you couldn't. Do you know what I mean? Like, you couldn't. If you broke the katas apart into the, let's argue, 6 techniques you focus on per kata. Rough guesstimate.
Yeah. Let's
say it's just for the sake of argument, let's say it's 5 techniques per kata. You can teach those 5 techniques on their own, unbound by them being in a kata-based structure. You could teach them on the other side. You could go from there. But would that be faster than teaching somebody a kata? I don't think so. Would it be more efficient? It could be. But you have to have been taught the kata to know that those movements exist. Which I know it's a little chicken and the egg theory. I get that.
Yeah.
Because obviously karate came before kata, but now kata informs karate.
Yeah.
And I think the fastest way for us as modern day karateka who are not in the sort of experimental phase of putting this martial art together in a formal fashion, we are the modern day people who are trying to suffuse a little bit of information from people from 1,000 years ago. It's the best method we have. We have these forms that have, yes, they've survived. Yes, they've also probably undergone very stringent changes. The Pinan series was originally one kata, as I've been told.
Yeah. It's a culmination of multiple things. Like, I wouldn't say necessarily one kata, but if you're referring to Kishanku or Kosoken, that there's, if you've ever practiced both the Pinans and the Kishanku kata, you can see that there is a very close relationship between them. It's quite clear that Pinans are highly influenced by that kata and other katas similar.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is kind of like a breakdown of that system. Yeah,
and it's a good like type 5 for your beginners to get a handle on.
Yeah, absolutely.
And again, I think that's the case of, and even then, like, you could. It maybe I'm splitting hairs here, but it's kind of, in theory, everything you do in the Pinans is in Kushanku, as an example.
Yeah.
Is it not more efficient then to teach your students one kata and just teach them Kishanku straight away? Or is it more effective to teach them 5 easily digestible katas?
Yeah, exactly.
What's more efficient? And I think, and again, I think I'd have to kind of really circle back to my point being, no, I don't think there's a more efficient method than the kata. I don't think there's a modern variation of teaching technical movement sets, technical skills in that way. And as soon as you get beyond the most basic principles of how do I throw a straight punch, how do I throw a front kick, how do I throw a side kick, how do I throw a roundhouse, how do I throw a hook punch, those individual elements, they're as efficient as they're ever going to get. You can teach somebody a straight punch in 2 minutes, right? It might take you a full 90 minutes of a session to teach a beginner the Pinan kata to an element where it's respectable, and it will take you another 90-minute lesson to go through all of the application in the first Pinan.
If not longer, yeah.
Pinan Shodan. If not longer, you could spend a week.
Oh, gotcha.
On just Pinan Shodan alone. Again, do I think there's more efficient methods of transferring that? No, would be my honest answer.
No, and don't get me wrong. Like, I think this would be a good place to cap this question. So I think one of the things that I'll say is that if anybody has other methods that they think have been really beneficial for them in terms of their learning, in terms of the way that your instructors have approached transmitting information, I'd be really interested to hear what you have to say below, because obviously there are very different interpretations of how to do that. Like, there's no formal katas in things like Muay Thai. There's no formal katas in things like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or kickboxing. Now, does that mean that they're not learning things? No, it just means that they're learning them in a slightly different way. So it'd be interesting to see what everybody else's thoughts are on patterns and katas. Other than that, though, Pat, I think that's it. I don't think we've got time for another question, have we?
No, that's our top 3 done.
Fantastic.
And okay. Well, thank you very much for that, Jack.
Absolute pleasure. I love that.
Thank you for listening at home. I am very excited for our final episode of the season next week. Our special guest. That will be the end of our second season. please get on iTunes, get on Apple Podcasts, get on Spotify, and give us 5 stars. Leave a comment. What's your favorite takeaway? What is a talking point from the session that you particularly picked up on? All engagement is good engagement. We enjoy hearing from you, and every single time, every single
Absolutely.
comment, it really makes our day to hear it.
100%.
Other than that, if you want to go looking for us in a personal context, you can find me on Instagram at Good Medicine Martial Artist. Jack, where can we find you?
You can find me at www.cotswoldkarateschool.com, and you can also find me at Cotswold Karate School on Instagram too. By all means, come and check out what we do, and if you ever fancy popping along and training with us, or you fancy coming to one of the seminars that we host, we'd be more than happy to have you.
Excellent. Well, Jack, I'll see you next week for the final episode of season 2.
I can't believe that's it already.
Thank you for listening at home. Thank you for sticking with us, and we'll catch you next time.
Take care.